All right. Prasanna, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I'm really looking forward to understanding a little bit more about Kore.ai, but also I'd really like to hear a little bit more about your background, what brought you to the organization, and what you all are hoping to do in the future. So let's start off with what brought you to the organization.
Good morning, Joe. Uh, Pleasure to be here. So I've been with Core from the beginning. So I'm the employee number one, started building the product and the team based out of India. So it's been quite a journey for about 9 years now, I think, with Core.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, Raj Koner, who is the CEO, and I, so we said we want to, the time of messaging, we want to really enable the enterprise messaging. We want to take it to the next level. So in terms of person-to-person messaging, and then from there, we kind of pivoted into person-to-application messaging. So that's where the bots came in. So we introduced the whole bots, and we wanted to say, how people can interact with virtual assistant, bots at that point in time. And then we said, why can't we, whatever the technology we built, why can't we expose it to enterprises so they can easily go and build virtual assistant and deploy them for their customers and their employees to get benefits. So that's how the journey has started. And fortunately, conversational AI has become the stream or technology to get into, and we are kind of. I'm really proud that we are in a phase where we are completely transforming in the way people actually consume AI. So this is, while AI has impacted many different industries and fields, conversational AI is kind of special because now it is actually enabling people to interact with. So it is something that people can see directly and feel the
Yeah,
power of it.
absolutely. So I'm kind of curious to get your impression because I've talked to a lot of people about this, and actually, there's no consensus around it. Were you surprised that ChatGPT took off like it did, or not so much?
So I was surprised about this technology, but not necessarily just with ChatGPT, because even before, even before we were actually exploring the LLMs with GPT-3 and other LLMs that came in, and their ability to understand nuances of conversation and context was really mind-boggling. I mean, we have been seeing this technology right from the days of birth. And, even though there was a promise, we never really saw those results really. And with GPT-3, when we started playing around with it, the kind of context that it can, understand and really generate text with that context in place. And even to an extent, ability to control, for various different types of adversarial inputs was actually amazing. I mean, I think, two things obviously stood out, right? So one is the whole attention layer, and then, later the quality of data, of course, and the human in the loop. So by providing these, human feedback to continuously make it learn and control on what the outcomes will be, that's actually fascinating. And, obviously, the number of parameters, the size of the model and all, that's obviously the big contributor to it. But then, this is the balance, right? So these LLMs, you can't make them to be completely controlled, because otherwise they will be rigid. They will be rigid, and they won't be flexible for new kind of input, or they won't be creative at all. So there has to be a balance between just being coherent in responses, but at the same time to be creative. So that's a very tough thing. I think the combination of the human feedback, the fine-tuning layers, and the quality of data, I think that's what actually made the quality outcome. I think ChatGPT, in a way, that fine-tuning, it did kind of surprise me, because even with GPT-3, there was some amount of lack of control. But then, ChatGPT, when it came out, anybody in the world to be able to interact with it, feel it, see the outcomes was actually amazing. And then, it kind of the scale at which it spread is amazing.
No, it was
So it's good for
phenomenal.
us. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's good for us as well. I mean, we've been in this industry trying to educate people on how you can actually take benefit of conversational AI. So that's out of the thing now. So we don't have to, coach and train businesses about how to get best out of conversational AI. They are all seeing it, that it is possible to have a very natural conversation. But then, of course, I mean, it does come with its own drawbacks, right? So obviously, people kind of are not still realizing that ChatGPT or any other LLMs they are actually generative AI technologies. They are not necessarily answering virtual assistants. So, you can't literally take the answer that comes out of these LLMs, for factual information. By its nature, they are only learning statistical patterns. So yes, by having quality content, you can actually keep them focused towards the facts, but then, they can't have access to all the facts, and we can't guarantee that everything that gets generated out of these LLMs is going to be perfect and is going to be of correct nature. So that is something, it's sort of, it's sort of puzzling for me on how it will evolve, because to me, the purpose of it, putting it to search use cases I mean, it's kind of question mark, because previously when people search for something, they would make a decision on how to consume information based on the source of information. Now they're creating an interface where we are directly providing the answer, and how people consume it, would they realize that, it's an answer, I still need to review it for correctness or factual reference. That is something I don't know, average user will be able to do it or not.
I think you're right on about that, and that's something that I either read maybe from a quote from you or someone from your organization, but it was the idea that the premise around um, people gathering information or learning things from what's AI applied to open source information is a recipe for disaster. So if that's the case, then how do we hone what is most important for the algorithms to look at these data sets? Like what data sets should they be looking at if they're not looking at the entirety of what's out there on the internet? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think I would say I would rather approach it slightly differently. Obviously, from a data sets point of view, the quality of data set is very, very important, because, what sources that we are feeding in, it needs to not have bias and, all of that. And also the human feedback on the data is very critical. But then having said that, however quality of data you maintain, you're still going to have that, lack of coverage problem, right? So, it's still not going to have new information that's available. It's still not, if something is a fact yesterday, maybe debunked today, right? So, you need to be able to keep updating that on all. Rather, the right way to approach this is to have those constraints, or even sort of a factual grounding, they call it, wherein nudge the models, take the benefits of the model, but at the same time augment it with the information that's actually factual in nature from various different other sources. So for example, even I was just reading a paper from Microsoft Research yesterday. They were also trying to do something in the similar lines, where they're augmenting LLM's factual information from external sources. Similarly, Lambda also in its paper that they have mentioned, they have connections to information retrieval systems, calculator, and things like that. So it's actually LLM can take that additional information from sources, but still, it is still going to be restricted to those knowledge sources only. So if really enterprises has to use it, then you have to have another layer that will actually take the LLM for its benefits and then connect to the enterprise business rules, data, enterprise knowledge bases and things like that, and then orchestrate a layer on top of it to keep the right information, when to use the LLM outcome, when not to use it, what kind of outcomes we should use it. That kind of a balance has to be made. So it's sort of like not training the model itself, rather layering on top of it to make sure we use it for its strengths, and also keep in mind, I mean, hallucination is a natural behavior. As long as it is a statistical in nature, it is going to hallucinate. And it may not be all the time, but you can't guarantee when.
So, no, great. I really appreciate that perspective. So maybe focusing a little bit more about Core AI, your company. What do you see the landscape looking like over the next few years? If you can start to get out the crystal ball, what does that look like? Where do you think you'll go with it?
Well, I think, see, one of the key initiatives that we are working on now with large language models is that to be able to go make enterprises build their own language model. So now let's say ChatGPT for an enterprise, and have, imagine that, like, what if there is a ChatGPT for your salesperson, or ChatGPT for your support person. So it gets all the knowledge of that sales persona, and all the knowledge of the products that you offer, the services that you do, all of that. And then to be able to go help either the salesperson do better, or even service the customer directly, like go to the customer and start selling, for example, right? So I think, see, one of the key elements in the businesses is that not one persona will have all the knowledge. So I would look at it like, saying, what if we can enable a salesperson or a service person to have their own personal assistant, but with the entire knowledge at its hand, right? So as in, let's say if the salesperson may not be they may be very strong in selling, but they not be very, very strong in understanding the customer use case or even the product knowledge, for example. So what if they had an assistant who would have fantastic product knowledge, who would understand customer use case, at a greater length, and then help the salesperson create a pitch on the fly with all this information, and then make the sell, for example, right? So that is possible. I mean, with that's what we have been doing with conversational AI virtual assistants, both in terms of directly servicing customers in the customer support use cases, or servicing employees in their IT, HR kind of tasks, or even helping agents to do their job better. But now with the LM, we can actually create a persona. We can create that wonderful knowledge into one virtual assistant, and that can help improve. I mean, the salesperson now can focus on closing more deals rather than going and prepping for each customer separately, product wise. So they have all the knowledge in hand because they now have a virtual assistant.
Oh, well said. So would Core AI ever leverage some of the APIs that are out there for Lambda or for ChatGPT or any other ones that are coming out?
We are already doing it.
Okay.
So we do use, I mean, we have in our platform, we have integrations with GPT-3, and then we are integrating with the ChatGPT APIs as well that have come in. But then we also have been working with open source large language models, because some of the enterprises do not want to send their data to cloud and those APIs and all that, right? So that is still there. And we have, and the thing is, ChatGPT or GPT-3, they have been fine-tuned for a lot of those general purpose tasks. For us, the main focus is helping the enterprises realize, use this to best serve their customers and improve their businesses, right? So for us, we can actually take the open source LLMs and build a layer on top of it for those tasks. So that's what we've been doing. So we're kind of doing both. I mean, even in case of when we use GPT-3 APIs, we do fine-tuned custom models. And in some cases, we use open source LLMs and build custom models on top of it.
Wonderful. Okay. So I'd love to ask you maybe two questions that are a little more futuristic, if that's okay. And if you don't want to answer, that's fine. But I'd love to get maybe your impressions on one or two concepts. The first is I'm sure you're familiar with AI, the AI alignment problem, which is, of course, the way that systems can be kind of encoded to represent human morals and values going forward. Where do you think we are with that? Is that something that you think we're progressing towards, or is there still not a lot of consensus around that?
I don't think, I don't think there is a lot of consensus on it yet. I mean, there's still, I don't think the technology is there at this point in time wherein, we need to really worry about that part of it yet. But I think, it may be soon. But I guess we will reach that consensus soon. That's what I can.
Well, the reason why I ask it is because I do like to look at both sides of what's happening, and I usually tend to fall in the middle myself. When you speak to some people and like, AI is really not going to impact anybody's lives. Maybe it'll help out a little bit here or there, but it's going to take generations before it really has a massive effect on employment or the way that we do things day to day. Now, I think those are fewer and far between in terms of people that would argue that. But then you have this other side, which I'm starting to hear a little bit more about, which used to be extraordinarily fringe, but now I don't know if it's as fringy as it used to be. And that is, are you familiar with the name Eliezer Yudkowsky? He's
Sorry, I'm not familiar.
so he basically is undergoing the premise that he initially started off, he's a researcher, especially within AI, and his focus is really around friendly AI. But he's gotten a lot of press recently because he's talking about, and again, this is what I thought of as fringy. He could see the end of times because of AI being 3 years to at most 16 years away. And he's asking for everyone. Yeah, and Elon Musk actually responded to him recently in a Twitter thread, basically saying we need to take a step back from the really progressive aspects of this and holistically look at how people are creating the algorithms, are leveraging them, um, and what we can do to sort of say, okay, let's figure out a way forward that we can continue to use this as augmented intelligence, but it could go down the road. So my guess, based on what you've said already, is that you think that might be completely and totally out there. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, see, I think there is definitely a significant progress. So it is going to transform the way that we live, and it's going to have an impact on everybody's life across all fields and all sorts of work anybody do, right? So, and at the same time, I do agree to an extent that we do need to review it at every stage. For example, when we put out these search engines and ChatGPT kind of interfaces out there, it's not, people are, I mean, I have seen somebody actually sending me sort of a screenshot of ChatGPT saying, I gave this URL to ChatGPT and ChatGPT started answering those questions from the URL. I'm like, okay, so ChatGPT can't connect to internet. I mean, how do you go teach them? And how do you, I mean, the impact of these kind of misinformation, how, whether people using it responsibly, how do you ensure that it is taught, and how do you make sure people only consume it for what it is meant for and not go above and over beyond? So those are some of the questions. But I think if we start putting those constraints now, I don't think we will see the evolution. I mean, we will cut down on the innovation. right? So it's always every new technology when it comes out, there has to be some sort of a review of it. Some checks and balances or constraints and need to be thought about and all that. But I don't think we should stop in that sense where stop innovating. I mean, that's on the other extreme.
Fair enough. All right. One comment about that I started playing around with maybe a month ago or 2 months ago at this stage. Someone's built a plugin for Google Chrome that allows you to actually have ChatGPT search current information. So I know it's supposed to technically stop its index is 2021, but you can actually have it live, look at most current information out there. And it's a neat little plugin that works quite effectively. So it does go out to the most current information you can possibly get via Google, and also considers some of that for its decision making. So
Yeah,
or
so see,
answers.
there what's happening, Joe, is somebody else is actually crawling that, sending that content to ChatGPT to summarize the answer. So that we do. I mean, even in our solutions, when we say, we create that enterprise layer, that's what we do. We actually connect the enterprise sources, knowledge, and all on top of LLM. But LLM on its own is a pre-trained model. So it's just going to go generate text based on what is given. So the context, passing the context to LLM is, yes, pretty much, everybody does that to an extent. So the plugin that you said is really doing that. It's basically doing the crawling, getting the text, and then sending it to ChatGPT to answer from it. That's fair. But what I have seen, the example that I was talking about, is directly to ChatGPT giving a link and saying, "Oh, go." Go answer from it. So it does have information that is there on behind that link, because in the training data that it had that information. So it is probably not the information that is there on that website today, but similar information was there when, in the training data, and the answers are really convincing. I asked them, it was actually about some e-commerce website about some product catalog and all. So I asked them, go specifically look about a particular product, ask a question, and then go look at the website and see if it is there or not. So you won't find it sometimes. Slide 3, you may find one answer being there, but the rest of the 2 times you may not even find it, because it is hallucinating at that point in time, because LLMs are meant, by nature, they'll generate a text which is convincing, related to the context, and sort of goes with what you're asking for. So it looks as if it is telling the truth.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
All right, Prasanna, anything else that you'd like to mention about Core AI or anything else?
And I think one thing for sure, the enterprises, we are focused more on enabling enterprises to use conversational AI, and enterprise on their own cannot leverage, the LMs and make them augmented to their business and all that. So what we have been doing is we are helping the enterprises to get the benefits of LMs, but at the same time, putting those controls and also creating that layer of enterprise LM that really can understand enterprise business rules, data, and all that, and to be able to do it. So to me, I think people have to, there is humongous potential in the way that enterprises can transform their customer experience and employee experience. And I think conversational AI is going to play a significant role in that.
I couldn't agree with you more, but you are the expert. So I appreciate that very much, as well as all the rest of the conversation we've had. So um, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll talk again at some point.
All right. It was a pleasure, Joe. Thank
All
you.
right.
Have a good
Take care. Thank you.